How's the marathon going?
Woo!
You guys feeling burned?
Hour 10. Hour 11.
Let me get this remote control away from me. I think it's dangerous. So these are true stories. This first one is called Jerry's Kid. It was Labor Day weekend, 1977. I should have been outside enjoying the last hours of my summer vacation, but I didn't want to get too far from the television set. So I stayed inside the house fetching beers for my Irish uncles. From another part of the house, I could hear my dad doing his Jerry Lewis imitation. Dean! Dean! This meant that the Love Network had signed on. I doled out another round of Schaefer's and made a dash for the living room because when the Love Network signed on, I had to be there on the floor, too close to the television set, because I was obsessed with Jerry's kids. Jerry's kids were, and still are, afflicted with the disease muscular dystrophy. And the Love Network is the collective term for the TV stations that locally broadcast the Jerry Lewis Muscular Dystrophy Telethon. Eventually, my whole family would join me in the living room to settle in and watch the Cripples. I should say here that this was a time when a person could say crippled or cripple, and it was okay. Like, you could watch the telethon and say, oh, look at that poor crippled kid hugging Sammy Davis Jr., and it was fine. But if you were prone to euphemism in 1977, you could do what my father did and refer to a handicapped child as one of Jerry's kids. This was a little confusing. During my first few telethons, I was under the impression that Jerry Lewis had personally sired an entire generation of cripples. But even after I figured out that Jerry's kids were not actually Jerry's kids, the telethon was still my favorite show ever. The telethon, my family used to call it. We would sit around and watch the telethon all through that long weekend. Top drawer entertainment, all in one variety show live from Las Vegas. And those heart-rending stories of the children in wheelchairs. First, you would see the video presentation of a crippled boy in his wheelchair in the middle of a large green field as a voiceover of his parents would play. They would talk about how Tommy couldn't run and play like the other kids. Wheelchair Tommy was laughing in the field as butterflies flitted into the frame. He was lit softly, like an aging diva. Then we would be back in Vegas, on stage with Jerry, and there was Tommy wheeling out to meet him. Tearing up, Jerry would lean down to hug Tommy with one arm as he held the microphone in the other hand. Jerry never broke eye contact with the audience, offering up his face as the conduit of pathos we had come to rely upon every September. Then he would snap to attention and madly yell, "Timpani!" which meant that he wanted a drum roll, which meant that he wanted Ed McMahon to read the new total of money raised for his kids. The total appeared on a glittery scoreboard where the numbers would fly around until they arrived at the appropriate destination, like a slot machine. The timpani made everyone nervous. Me, Jerry, Ed, and even poor little Tommy in his wheelchair. As the drum rumbled and the numbers flipped, there was a part of me that believed that Jerry and his kids could come up snake eyes this time, zeros across the board. But the grand total always grew larger, and at the age of 7, I knew the gambler's catharsis because of Jerry Lewis. He made each timpani feel like a new jackpot we had won. "Yeah!" Jerry would cry out in his hey lady voice, drenched with sweat, tears, and vitalis. He had been entertaining our asses off for 2 days now. He looked like the gambler who stayed at the table just long enough for the odds to break his way. He made money raised for a good cause feel slightly shabby and kind of scary. Jerry, his kids, and his telethon terrified me. But I loved it. Jerry made every timpani feel like boozy magic. We never gave any money. In my family, we took the old adage, charity begins at home, to the next level. Charity began and ended at home for us. But the one exception that I remember was that Labor Day weekend when I was 7. My parents dragged me away from the television and took me to the Muscular Dystrophy Carnival. This was an event run by WNEP-TV 16, the news station, our local affiliate of the Love Network. The carnival took place in the open fields near Avoca International Airport. It was quite a scene. There were throngs of people playing games and riding rides and eating fun foods like funnel cake, which we all called pizza frite. And all of the money went to Jerry's kids. As a child, I was afraid of crowds, rides, and carnival games. The best case scenario for me was a quick pizza free and back in the car and home to Jerry and the kids. I didn't want to miss Dino singing That's Amore or a video package of a little crippled girl watching ballet class. But in an instant, my perspective changed. I could see in the distance a crowd gathering around one of those flatbed trailers that converted to stages for the display of local celebrities. And there she was, the local celebrity that held onto my imagination with a grip that rivaled Jerry's. Miss Judy. She hosted the morning cartoon show, Hatchie Malachi. Miss Judy was probably in her early 40s then, and she had a teenage daughter, but her look was crafted in the virginal image of Snow White. She presided over the magical land of Hatchie Malachi, where the ground was made of rubber. If you run and you fall, you'll just bounce like a ball in the land of Hatchie Malachi. On your birthday, you would tune into Hatchie Malachi, and Miss Judy would say, "Happy birthday to Mark Rizzo in the Bellevue section of Scranton. He's 4 years old today. Now, Mark, if you look under the brown plaid sofa in the living room, I think that you would like what you find." And of course, miraculously, there it was. Under the sofa was the plastic rifle that shot ping pong balls, just what I wanted. Miss Judy had conjured it. She could make things happen. She could see things ordinary people couldn't. And her magic was all good. Years later, we learned that Miss Judy's daughter was a drug addict, and everyone in my family thought this was really funny. To this day, I get upset when they bring it up. At the Muscular Dystrophy Carnival, Miss Judy shone like a beacon atop that flatbed. The late summer sun bathed her in a light more flattering than wheelchair Tommy's. "Miss Judy!" I cried out. "Hey, lady!" my dad echoed in his best Jerry Lewis. He took me on his shoulders, left my mom behind, and we headed straight for that flatbed. It was a mob scene. As I bounced closer to Miss Judy, I could see that she was collecting small bills for Jerry's kids in a big yellow bucket embossed with the letters MDA and that ubiquitous caricature of Jerry's face. About 3 yards away from the stage, the crowd became too thick for us to penetrate, so my father put a dollar bill in my hands, hoisted me off of his shoulders, and began to angle me, head first, toward the bucket. I was completely terrified. I felt my limbs go stiff as he flew me over the heads of children and parents and closer to Miss Judy's bucket. Then our eyes met. Miss Judy smiled as I held the dollar over the bucket and went slack in the jaw. I may have been drooling. Though I could see her pores through the thick coat of pancake makeup she wore, I was in complete awe and unable to move. My father's arms must have been getting tired from holding me at such an awkward angle above his head because he gave me a little shake and said, "Drop the dollar in the bucket already." I let go of the dollar, and as it floated into her bucket, Miss Judy's face turned sad. She grabbed my hand, and my body stiffened even further. "We are going to find a cure for you, and soon, sweetie," she whispered. My dad, exhausted, pulled me away from Miss Judy's soft grasp, and as I disappeared back into the crowd in my father's arms, I could still see Miss Judy looking out in my direction with the most pitiful expression I have ever seen in my life. She was bathing me in her pity, yet I could feel nothing but terror. Miss Judy had looked into my eyes, indeed into my very soul, and saw the truth. I was one of Jerry's kids. Just as she had known that there was a ping pong ball rifle under my sofa, Miss Judy knew that under my skin was hidden muscular dystrophy. In Vegas, the Teleton stumbled tipsily toward Monday evening in the final timpani. Charo had just done the coochie coochie, and Nadia Comaneci was now demonstrating the uneven bars to some crippled kids. They were buying Jerry time. He had spaghetti legs and blurred vision by now, a heavyweight in the final round of a fight with the champ. I lay on my stomach, holding my head in my hands a few feet away from the television, pretending everything was normal. But it wasn't. My mind was racing. I had been experiencing pain in my joints all summer, but never said a word to anyone. I was a cripple. Nobody but me and Miss Judy knew it yet, but I was a cripple, and no one else would ever know. I would continue to bear the pain in my joints with stoicism. When I began to lose mobility, I would crawl up to the trestle on the hill, sprawl myself across the train tracks, and wait for the eerie Lackawanna. I would be heroic in my silence, and at my wake, everyone would remark upon how much pain I had spared my family, and what a good boy I was.